This is episode 000 of the Bread Over Stones podcast. Vizzini said, go back to the beginning.
Welcome to the Bread Over Stones podcast, the show that gives grace-driven solutions to heal, unite, and inspire families. Your host is Matthew Morgan, a licensed professional clinical counselor in Ohio, a pastor, and my husband of over 20 years.
And my dad. He loves bringing families together and helping them relate better with one another.
At Bread Over Stones, you'll add to your toolbox as a parent and a spouse in order to improve the way you communicate, discipline, and ultimately show your love for your family.
So welcome to the show.
Greetings. Welcome to the Bread Over Stones podcast. My name's Matthew Morgan. I'm going to be your host today. Some of you are joining me by audio only, and to you I say welcome. Those of you who are joining me by video, greetings and welcome. I had originally started this to be an audio-only podcast because this mug loves audio and not necessarily video, but I had enough people tell me that they appreciate the YouTube content, and I don't want to sit there with just a blank screen the whole time. So you get to see me, and I'm sorry, but that's what it is. So anyway, I thank you for tuning in, and I welcome you to welcome you to being here. So this is episode 000. It's the start. If you're a longtime listener and you're coming back and listening to it, awesome. It means I've done okay. If we're all just getting started together, well, hopefully we do okay. So this is really the behind the scenes podcast. I want to talk to you a little bit about my heart, why I started Bread Over Stones, what it means to me, why I became a counselor, and hopefully what to expect from the podcast. And so hopefully this will be a little bit shorter than the normal ones. I can't promise anything. I come from a long background of talkers. So I've been a teacher. I've been a pastor. I even, as it says in the introduction, I was a stand-up comedian for a hot minute, and you'll find very quickly, you'll understand why it was not that long. I do a lot of situational humor, which doesn't always translate well. So who am I professionally? Well, you'll hear it 1,000 times. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in the state of Ohio. I've worked with kids as young as 5 and kids as old as 94, 95. I've worked with mood disorders, conduct disorders, relational issues. And so every step of the way, I just want to further my career, do something new. I appreciate new experiences. I've listened to podcasts a long time, and I've always thought, you know what? I really would love to try this. And so here we are. Welcome to my guinea pig world. So personally, I've been married for 20 years now, 21 years now. Don't tell her I said that. It's been perfect and wonderful the whole step of the way. We've never had any problems whatsoever. Yeah, I'm lying. It's had its ups and downs, and that's okay. We still make do, and I appreciate it. And of course, we still love each other, and we're still moving on. So I've also got an 8-year-old son. Now, we did struggle with infertility for about 13 years. So my wife and I had kind of adjusted to our own life. And then all of a sudden, boom, there he is. And we're kind of spent the last 8 years in a little bit of a crisis mode, trying to figure out what do we do with this wonderful, eccentric little boy who tends to act a whole lot like, well, really both of us. So what you'll hear is a lot of the learning that we've taken from that, as well as from my professional life. So, why do I do this? I tell people I grew up in a family of first responders, and first responders were my family. We had firemen, we had police, we had medics, everybody running around. And one of the things that always impresses me is they run towards danger. And while what I do is not nearly as dramatic as going into a burning building or pulling over somebody who's driving northbound on an east-west street, you know what? I like what I do. And what I tell people is that a lot of therapists like myself, we've gone through our own challenges. And we get through the other side, and there's something in us that clicks and says, you know what? I think I can go back and grab one more person and bring them out too. So for me personally, there's really, I think, three things that have shaped me as a counselor. The first is my parents' divorce. Now they did an amazing job. They really did as good as they could, raising my brother, my sister, and I. So don't take this as a cry against them. But there was a lot of inconsistency growing up. And so for me personally, when I was going into a marriage, what I wanted to do was not give my child that experience. So divorce hasn't been on the table. It's not something we joke about. It's not something we throw out there frivolously, even through some of the difficult times. My wife and I have always had the mentality of how do we work this out? How do we find the skills to get through this particular hurdle? And you'll hear a lot of that hopefully as we go on through Bread Over Stones. The second is my own salvation. And I'm not going to try to be too preachy in this podcast, but my faith was really intrinsic to who I am. And hopefully it is for you too, or at least you can respect where I come from. I was not raised in a church. What I remember most is that the pews were the perfect shape to race your cars down. But later on in life, I was a very angry 14-year-old. I remember kind of sitting at home going, you know what, I think I'm kind of done with everything. And I felt this indescribable presence, and I felt this idea that there was a purpose and a plan for my life. And so my father took me to church and later on to a lock-in. And I heard from teenagers my age who they had been through a lot of the same stuff that I had, and they were okay. And so I wanted to just continue on. And there I actually heard Jeremiah 29:11 for the first time. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And I really took that to heart. And I know theologically that's not my promise, that's Jeremiah's promise. But yet still the idea that God cares for us that much was so important to everything. And I think the third thing that really shaped me as a counselor was a call to ministry. I had felt, before college, I had really felt like I wanted to be a minister, and I wanted to have a church and be able to reach out to people that way. Went through 4 years of Bible college. Some of it was a struggle, just trying to keep everything together. It was my wife and I at that time. And I got to the end, and I failed the personality test. And for those of you who are going, I didn't know you could fail a personality test, I will tell you, neither did I up until that point. But some very, I think, looking back, maybe some well-meaning people just indicated that I didn't have the right personality to be a pastor, that I was too empathetic, that I wouldn't be able to handle it. And maybe they were right, because honestly, I couldn't bounce back from that. I tried doing some youth pastoring, but at that point there was always this second guess in me. And honestly, up until recently, when I stumbled on the work of Dr. Elaine Aron and her work on highly sensitive people, I thought I was weird or broken or wasn't able to be used. And her work, she talks about those of us who have this extra degree of empathy or sensitivity. And I thought, oh my goodness, the more I read her books, the more I studied her material, and I got her DVD, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is me. And I felt like I was home for the first time. So all of that filters into what you see now. You're not going to get perfection. I've several times in the midst of this, and I'm okay with that. I'm not looking to give the perfect, pristine, great broadcast to the world where I have the radio voice and pump you up. You're just going to get me. And hopefully you're going to get some other guests as we go along, because we want to share our struggles and we want to work together with that. So there's an old adage, it's given to Abraham Lincoln, who said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And as somebody who's had to cut down one of the trees in his front yard, I will tell you that this is probably pretty true. You want to have a sharpened axe going there. Or do what I do and call your brother-in-law with a chainsaw, and he can have the whole thing done in about 20 minutes. Thank you, Jason, for that, by the way, still. But I learned 3 things from this. Number 1, Abraham Lincoln was doing the best with what he could at that time. And number 2, he could do it better with different tools. And 3, good friends are great help. And these are the principles that really go into Bread Over Stones. You see, I was trying to come up with a name, and I was reading Matthew 7:9, which says, "Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone?" And it's a rhetorical question. Do you know what a rhetorical question is? Good. So Jesus is prophesying about the Holy Spirit coming into our lives, but there's a tone in there that we all want to give good things to our children. Most of us don't delight in seeing them suffer and seeing their needs unmet, at least not for any length of time. And so with that idea, to borrow from President Lincoln, number 1, I know that you're doing the best that you can with what you have. Number 2, I want to give you more tools for your family life. And number 3, we work together in this. You know, Acts 2:42 says that the church grew because they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. So when we get more tools to show our love to God and others, we're honoring Him. So who's this podcast for? It's for anyone who wants help in their relationships. I've designed it for the busy family with a few kids who just need some encouragement. But you know what? It can be for parents. It can be for children or grown children or step parents or foster parents or teachers or bus drivers or even politicians. It's for anybody who wants to improve these relationships and to have something else in the toolbox. So there are a few limitations that I want to talk about. Number 1, this is not therapy. There's going to be a big disclaimer at the end of every episode to remind you of that, because I have to do that. But this is education to give you more tools. If you need professional help in your area, find it. Find a therapist. Find somebody you can work with. Call your insurance company and ask for a referral from them. If you're waiting to do that, it's simple to do. Just call them. Call the member number. If you're in Ohio, you can call 211, and I'm sure other places have similar programs, but just dial 211 and say you're looking for mental health services. There's a lot available. I just don't want to see you not take advantage of those. Number 2, these are not meant for somebody who's living in a domestic violence or an abuse situation. I will probably record a PSA about this separately, because if you've been on my professional website, you'll notice down at the bottom there's some information about that as well. You know what, though? If there's an imbalance of power, if you're being abused or manipulated or controlled through fists or words or finances or sex, find an exit strategy at this point. Even if it's just a temporary one, get away from things. If you need help, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. It's easily searchable, 1-800-799-7233. Call them for help. If you or your children are in danger, just get out of that situation for right now, because you need to be out before you can fix it. Hopefully you understand that. And number 3, to piggyback off of number 1, not every tool is going to be useful at all times. Be creative, adapt things as needed. And in fact, if you come up with an ingenious way of carrying around something that I put in there or using something that I put out there, throw us an email and let me know that. Let me know what's going on, and I would love to know your successes, because we're all in different situations and every family makeup is just a little bit different. And I do want to address the elephant in the room quickly, because most of what I'm going to talk about comes from a heteronormative approach. That's my target audience. It's my strength. But please understand that this isn't to say that people from the LGBTQ community are not welcome. On the contrary, if you find information here and can apply it, by all means do so. My main reason for taking this approach is just for simplicity, not exclusion. If I have to identify every possible pronoun every time I use one, this podcast is going to be about 9 hours long. But please understand that if I ever see you face to face and you give me your requested pronouns, I will use those. I will honor that in you. plus there's also situations where psychological principles are gender driven, independent of our sexuality, and other times they're gender role driven. So you can see where this gets fluid very quickly. But the bottom line is, if you're here and if you're getting something out of this podcast, you are loved, you are welcome, and that's really all there is to it. We are all human beings at our core. So for everyone else now, what to expect out of the podcast. For now, I'm going to be releasing on Monday mornings. That's what I'm hoping. I'm going to have specific tools that will help you build your family to grow a bigger sense of attachment with one another. At some point, I would like to add in some interviews with people. I would love to talk to people who have gone through some of the marital challenges so that we can be encouraged by one another. So if that's you, throw me an email and let's talk about what we can do. So for today, all right, I always want to leave you with some sort of touch point for your family. So what's something that can help bring you together? If you've made it through this cast, then sometime today, I want you to make one meaningful connection with your loved one. If it's appropriate to hug that person, just do so. In our family, we practice the 20-second hugs, and we laugh about it. And we'll sit there and hug for a little bit, and even my young son will sit there and look up at mom and say, "Has it been 20 seconds yet?" But that's okay. It's a meaningful connection, and I think he appreciates it. So just do that out of the blue, or shake a hand, or just look somebody in the eyes and compliment them. Remember that family is the one in whom you're investing, and this is why you're doing these things. Sometimes we get caught up in all the junk, and we just need to get that refresher and that cleared air to say this is worth fighting for. So thank you for letting me into your lives today. If you have comments, concerns, or testimony, I'd love to hear about it. You can send an email to comments@breadoverstones.com or fill out the web form on our website at breadoverstones.com. You can also get more resources and hopefully show notes there, and just about anything else that I can think to throw in that area. So I pray that you'll receive the bread of God's grace today and that you are able to pass it on to others. Thank you again. Have a great day. Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod at Incomtech.com for the introduction piece, Carefree, and the conclusion piece, Cattails, both licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.
This show, its hosts and guests are designed to provide accurate and helpful educational information. It is not a substitute for personal counseling, and it shouldn't be taken as legal, accounting, medical, or other professional advice.
If you need a professional, you should find one in your area.